The conference room fell silent as I pushed open the doors. Gold and white balloons formed an arch over the table. Champagne bottles nestled in ice buckets. A banner hung on the wall, celebrating new leadership. My stomach dropped. The entire board sat waiting. My parents, our executives, and my sister Celine, dressed in a cream suit like she was accepting an Oscar. No one had told me about this celebration. I had scheduled this meeting. My mother's voice cut through the silence. "Rowena, glad you could make it." As if I were a guest, not the co-founder. Then my father stood. "Today marks a pivotal moment for our family company," he announced. "We're proud to announce the transition of leadership. Celine will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately." Applause erupted. I stood frozen, unable to move my hands, unable to breathe. Selena smiled like she was bathing in spotlight while I searched her eyes for any trace of explanation. But she'd already turned away. "I believe it's time to streamline leadership," she said smoothly, her voice dripping with calculated charm. The HR director approached me, papers in hand. Termination documents. My eyes darted to my parents. They looked everywhere but at me. Celine stepped closer and whispered, "It's not personal, Rowena. You've outlived your role." "Not personal?" My voice barely audible. "I signed the incorporation papers with Dad the week I turned 25. I canceled my wedding to save us during the cash flow crisis. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, even Grandma's funeral when there was a company fire to put out." I clutched the folder, already knowing what it contained. Cold, sterile, final. In the hallway, I caught up to Celine. "You couldn't even tell me in private?" She didn't turn. "This is business, Rowena," she said coldly. "You always made it too personal." The next morning, I spotted the headline. "Gale Industries appoints new female CEO, continues legacy." Legacy. I had been that legacy, just invisible now. Reaching into the box of my belongings for a tissue, my fingers found something tucked under the cardboard flap. A plain envelope with my name in careful handwriting. It wasn't in the original packing. I stared at it. The return address showed our legal counsel. The paper shook in my hand. I didn't open it right away. I needed to breathe first. But deep down, I knew this letter might change everything. Afternoon light slanted through the blinds, dust particles swirling in golden haze as I broke the seal. The flap resisted slightly, like it knew what was inside wasn't meant for me to see. The paper was heavier than expected. Expensive stock embossed with our company's legal letterhead. Not a severance package, but a notarized agreement dated 4 years ago. My breath caught as I skimmed the opening lines. It was from the night Celine came to my apartment crying, scared we wouldn't make payroll. She said we needed $250,000 by week's end, or we'd default on a supplier contract and lose our biggest client. I'd driven 3 hours to Austin in the middle of the night to meet with a lawyer she trusted. I remembered sitting in his office with gas station coffee, my hair still damp from a rushed shower, as I signed the temporary power of attorney and wired the funds from my personal account. "Rowena, I'll never forget this. I mean it," she had sworn, clutching my hand so tightly her nails left marks. The document was clear. I'd transferred the funds personally, and in return, I'd been granted a 10% non-dilutable voting stake, active unless I submitted a signed resignation. A resignation I never gave. They couldn't just toss me out like an assistant who misplaced files. They knew this. The only reason they thought they could get away with it was if they assumed I'd forgotten, that I'd lost the paperwork, that I was still the same girl who put family loyalty before legal leverage. They were banking on my silence. My thumb pressed along the embossed seal. The ink hadn't faded. Celine's signature still curled at the bottom next to mine. Everything inside me went still. They hadn't just pushed me out. They'd tried to erase me after everything I'd sacrificed. My mind started racing. I went to the garage, the door groaning as it opened, letting in thick afternoon heat. Dust hung in the air, clinging to boxes stacked along the far wall. I dug through them, old files, thumb drives, tax folders from years back. I found what I was hoping hadn't disappeared during my last move. Inside were emails printed and stapled, labeled by month, wire receipts from the bank showing the exact transfer, and a flash drive taped inside a folder. I plugged it into my laptop right there on the workbench. A voice memo Celine recorded 4 days after the loan. "I don't know how to thank you. If I ever forget this, I don't deserve to be in charge of anything, let alone this family." I played it twice. The second time, I didn't cry or flinch. I just let the resolve settle in. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a full rewrite of history, and I'd been too trusting to see it coming. Back inside, I gathered my laptop, the letter, and key documents into my leather tote, one of the few gifts Dad had given me that wasn't handed down from Mom's closet. I needed somewhere to think. I stopped at a quiet coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and insurance office. The kind where no one asks questions if you stay too long. For the next hour, I combed through every email I'd archived, payroll reports I'd signed, marketing plans with my comments, financial breakdowns I'd assembled during the 2020 downturn. The longer I worked, the less I felt like someone licking wounds and more like someone preparing for battle. They thought I'd go quietly. They'd underestimated me. My inbox pinged. Subject line: "I don't agree with what they did to you. We need to talk." It was from Clark, our company accountant. Quiet, observant, loyal. I clicked the message, heart pounding. Later in his apartment, old but clean, mismatched furniture, mail stacked by the door, he motioned me to sit. A laptop and USB drives sat on the table like evidence in a courtroom. "They told me to delete everything," he began, voice low but steady. "Board meeting minutes, your shareholder records, voting logs. I was supposed to make it look like you never mattered." My stomach turned. I stayed silent, letting the weight of his words settle. He opened his laptop and clicked through a folder labeled "Not Forgotten." "They said if I kept quiet, I'd get a raise," he continued. "They assumed I'd play along because I'm invisible too. Just the accountant." He pressed play on the first file. My sister's voice, clear and cold, filled the room. "She was never meant to last here. She's dead weight. An emotional liability." I didn't flinch, but my throat tightened. Clark glanced over, but I didn't break eye contact with the screen. Next recording. My mother. "She's family, but we need someone more presentable, reliable. The firm needs a clean face, not someone who disappears for months." I hadn't disappeared. I'd taken leave to care for Blake during his second round of chemo. I'd kept the books running. I was answering emails at 3 a.m. while they posted filtered photos from ski resorts. They knew it. I didn't cry. The time for that had passed. "Did they sign off on it?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Your father was hesitant. Your mother and sister pushed it. He didn't fight long." "And you still have the originals?" "I kept everything, out of guilt and fear." "I'm not here to punish you, Clark. I'm here to correct what they buried." He handed me the USB drives. "There's one more thing. The retreat, the one you skipped, that's when it started. They used your absence to argue you were disengaged." A memory flickered. Me spooning broth into Blake's mouth while his body rejected another treatment. Ignoring texts about mandatory team bonding while watching those same colleagues toast champagne in matching bathrobes. When I returned, half my projects were reassigned. No explanation, no welcome back, just smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "You've done enough, thank you," I told Clark. He nodded, eyes downcast. "I'll deny it if they come for me." "You won't have to. I'm not going through the courts, yet." That night, I labeled a new folder on my encrypted drive. Phoenix. I reactivated my long-dormant LinkedIn account. Another sacrifice I'd made to appear loyal. Within minutes, notifications poured in, but one message froze me mid-sip. "Hey, stranger. Still got that spark? I may have a proposition." Lyle Parkson, my former mentor. The only one who saw me as more than the younger daughter in a family business. His message continued. "I always knew who the real architect behind those contracts was. Let's build something that's yours this time. Name on the door. Full seat at the table. Come talk. 2 days later, I stood before a sleek glass building downtown. The lobby smelled like cedar and fresh espresso, nothing like the stale carpet and ego of my family's office. I didn't look broken anymore. I looked like someone who had remembered her worth. That evening, reviewing the accountant's files again, one caught my eye. Bridge grant term signed PDF. I remembered the deal vaguely. A fast-tracked funding injection done under pressure. The file loaded slowly. My stomach knotted as I scrolled down and saw it. My signature at the bottom. Only I'd never signed that page. Not then. Not ever. I pulled out an old notebook and compared the handwriting. The curves, the slant. Close, but not mine. Selene had forged my signature. She didn't even know I looped my lowercase g differently. Sloppy. Entitled. She must have thought I'd never check. My father once told me business was about trust, that in our family, your word was your bond. I wondered what he'd say now after letting Selene bond my name to something I never approved. I went to the printer and watched the pages slide out, physical proof of their fraud. I tucked the forged contract into a plain envelope and wrote in neat black ink, "To the Office of Business Ethics, State of California." Like, this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about setting fire to the lie they'd built and standing in the smoke with my head held high. 2 weeks later, I stood before the courtroom doors with both feet planted. Not shaking, not second-guessing, just steady. Inside, Selene sat at the opposing table, dressed like she was still trying to win a pageant. Her lawyer looked tense, tapping a pen, flipping pages. They should have reviewed better. The judge took his seat and adjusted his glasses. "We've reviewed the financial documents submitted by the plaintiff," he began, voice firm but not theatrical. "There are discrepancies between the versions submitted by Miss Selene Gale and the original ledger obtained by the defense." He looked directly at her. "Submitting forged financial records to this court is not just an error. It is a criminal offense." The room didn't gasp. It just went still. Selene didn't speak, her jaw locked in place, eyes wide. But she didn't look at me. She looked at the judge like he'd spoken a language she'd never been forced to learn before, consequence. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but she shook her head like someone refusing to believe gravity. "Given the submission of fraudulent material," the judge continued, "we're referring this case for criminal review under Penal Code 115. Additionally, the court orders financial penalties to be paid to the defendant for damages incurred." Just like that, it was over. Outside, reporters gathered with microphones and cameras. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I walked past the crowd, calm and collected. The story would speak for itself. That evening, I returned to my new studio, a co-working space I'd helped open with 2 other women who'd been forced out of their own companies. We had no receptionist, no glass trophy cases, just worn hardwood floors, real plants, secondhand desks, and freedom. My workspace was simple: a laptop, a corkboard, a window that caught morning light, and Dad's chair, cleaned, polished, the wood now warm amber. I had a small plaque engraved and fastened to the back, "To the one who stayed silent and then spoke the loudest." I didn't cry when I read it. I just sat and let the weight of it settle. My story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming. As I looked out the window at the street below, bustling with people chasing their own dreams, I felt something I hadn't in years. Stillness. Not silence. Not submission. Stillness. Later that night, I recorded a voice note for myself, something to return to if I ever forgot. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It shows up quietly in a courtroom, in an old chair, or in a new beginning. I sat back and let the words echo. Then I asked myself aloud, not needing an answer. Have you ever had to walk away from the very thing you built just to save yourself? If you've ever been silenced, erased, or pushed aside, know this: your voice matters. Your contribution matters, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting to stay where you're not wanted. It's building something new where you're valued. If this resonated with you, hit that like button so others might find this message. Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step. And subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power when others try to take it away.